Neil Villapiano of Devil's State of Mind podcast and my new teammate over at Pucks and Pitchforks accompanied me on today's episode as we hear his thoughts and opinions on the 2023-2024 New Jersey Devils season. There's a lot to break down with Neil. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Scores! Oh, Steven stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, Devils writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credential being member Trey Matthews. Joining me on this show is a guy who has not appeared on this show for a little over 2 years. He is the host of Devil's State of Mind podcast and my new colleague over at Pucks and Pitchforks. It is Neil Villapiano. Neil, how you doing?
Trey, it is an absolute pleasure to be on Locked On Devils for the first time in a couple of years. Things have certainly changed a lot since the last time you and I spoke on here. And yeah, now I just started writing for Pucks and Pitchforks as a contributor. Really excited to get going with that. And, as far as the Devil's State of Mind podcast, continuing to go strong. Actually just posted a new episode today, giving my thoughts on everything from the draft and free agency. And that's what we're going to be talking about here as well. And I'm just excited to talk to you, man. It has been quite some time.
I know it's been quite some time. I saw you won like a Hall of Fame award for a network or something like that.
Yeah, I was.
Fill everyone in.
Yeah, so I was part of the podcast, not only where you can listen to it and also check it out on YouTube, you can also check it out on SportsWire Radio, which is a 24/7 sports international radio station to which I am a part of. And my good buddy, Thomas Bryce, who is the owner of it all, he inducted me not too long ago into the SportsWire Hall of Fame. So I was very honored to be a part of that and be a part of one of those first few Hall of Fame classes. So I'm really happy about that.
And Neil, something I like to do when I'm credentialed at the Prudential Center is in between periods, I love to go out into the concourse and just pace around to see who I can run into. And we've bumped into each other a couple of times. And I just got to say, it's so weird seeing someone that I've interacted with before, but in the flesh. It was like, it was so hard to not believe, but it's just like, it was a weird feeling, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And for me, with the amount of games that I go to, it's always interesting to run into people who you interact with on social media and you talk with, whether it's, on the main area or if you're, direct messaging them. And fortunately enough, and, I'm sure you could say the same thing, I've been able to develop a lot of really good relationships and friendships with a lot of Devils fans, a lot of people. And I tell everybody all the time that if you see me, don't be afraid to come up and say hi and interact. I love talking with everybody, getting to know where everybody comes from, how they became a Devils fan, and just interact with them. It is absolutely tremendous, and it was great to see you. I think the last time I saw you was the last home game of the year, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't think I was there, but
or maybe I walked past. You weren't there for that one. Maybe it was
the final home game of 2023.
Final home game. Yeah, right. So I did see you there, which was great. Which was great to actually see you and finally get to meet you in person. And yeah, it is always interesting when you meet somebody that you interact with and that you've interviewed and things like that. And now you get to see them in person and have a one-on-one conversation, which is great. Absolutely.
And when I met my colleagues over at the draft, from Locked On, it surprised me how tall some of them are. Like some of them are 6'3", 6'5". I'm like,
yeah.
I thought you were going to be like a small itty bitty dude, but no, you're taller than me. Which is,
it sounds like Locked On's trying to have this criteria that you have to be 6'2", 6'3" to be a host.
I'm just under 6 feet, so
fair enough. I'm 5'11", so I feel that pain.
I don't meet the criteria, but anyway, I guess it depends on the shoes I wear as well. But
right.
But anyway, Neil, enough of that. Let's talk about the 2023-2024 Devils season. Very inconsistent, injury plague. I've asked so many people their thoughts and opinions on the season. From your perspective, what happened?
It's always funny that you always bring me on when we need to talk about the negative. We need to talk about what didn't go right and all this other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I'll to your defense, I wish I did bring you on last year to discuss like the good. It was a
historic. You were on my podcast, though. I'll give you that.
I was on your podcast. So... And I predicted Damon Severson and Ryan Graves were going to be gone, and they were gone.
Right. You were absolutely right. You kind of nailed it on the head. A lot of inconsistencies. It seemed like 2 years ago when the Devils had the unbelievable season, made the playoffs, got to the second round, everything went right. The offense, the defense was solid. We had consistent goaltending until the playoffs. Everything was going right. Going into this season, everything went wrong. Almost everything went wrong. There were times where the offense was there. The power play was unreal. The first month and a half of the year was scoring at a ridiculous rate, which we all knew was going to eventually die down. Unfortunately, it died down a lot more than we all would have liked to see. And then the injuries. I mean, we talk about it. Here are a list of guys that played every single game 2 years ago that did not play every game this year. Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt missed a bunch. Dougie Hamilton was out 3/4 of the entire season. The goaltending wasn't there. Vitek and Akira Schmid were both out at different times due to injuries. It was just a lot. Injuries killed us. Lack of consistent play. I think the identity of the Devils was exposed a lot more in this past year. And I think that there was a target on the Devils' back. And I don't think that the team overall was mature enough at that time to really know how to deal with that type of adversity and really deal with that type of, frustration when things got tough. And, getting thrown around, especially towards the end of the year, was incredibly frustrating. And Lindy Ruff's system, you and I have talked about it before, and I've made my feelings about Lindy Ruff pretty clear. I was never the biggest fan of him when the Devils hired him, and I said that they had to make a deep run in the playoffs for me to be okay with him staying around. Even though, yes, they made the second round of the playoffs 2 years ago, I was still I was totally okay with moving on, finding someone else to kind of, take the next step. And obviously the Devils didn't want to do that. Tom Fitzgerald was too close with Lindy Ruff to make that move. He even spoke about saying it was very emotional to let Lindy Ruff go. I know some people want to say that it wasn't all Lindy Ruff's fault, and you're right, it wasn't all, but he's very much responsible for the inconsistencies. But Tom Fitzgerald deserves a lot of the blame. He did not, in my opinion, do enough to take this team to the next level last year. I felt that he looked at it like, well, we have a bunch of young guys that could come in and continue the consistency. That was not the case. You're relying on guys like Luke Hughes and Simone Nemec, who at one time or another I think held their own pretty well, but you're asking them to have top 4 minutes every night in their rookie year, their full rookie year, and that's going to be a challenge. I don't think that the defense was replaced. I can't believe I'm saying this. There were times where I felt like we did miss guys like Damon Severson, guys like Ryan Graves on the back end. Goaltending, absolute mess. Vitek Vanacek was unfortunately a one-year wonder. Akira Schmid, it sucks. It sucks that obviously the Devils had to move on from him, but you know what? Considering what the Devils have right now, and considering what they ended up getting, especially this offseason and at this past trade deadline, I can understand it. It's unfortunate. We'll always have that memory of 2000 of that playoff, that first round against the Rangers, but it was time for a change. And then you have other guys like Alexander Holtz. I've been a big fan of Alexander Holtz, and it didn't work out. To put it simply, it just didn't work out. Whether you want to blame it on Lindy Ruff, whether you want to blame it on Alexander Holtz or Tom Fitzgerald, or a combination of everything, it just didn't work out. And again, I do hope nothing but the best for him. I'm a little bit worried that he's going to end up like Sharon Govich in Calgary, where he just really redeems himself. But, obviously there's nothing that the Devils could do about that now. But, overall, there was a lot left to be desired from the Devils. Very, very disappointing with the expectations that they had. Should have been a lot better than where they were, even with the injuries, in my opinion.
Before we continue with today's episode, let me tell you guys about Game Time. I've actually used the Game Time app to purchase some MLB and NBA tickets in the past. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats. All in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Get a great view of your seat in the app before you buy. And the lowest price guaranteed, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in ticketing industry. Sounds like a good deal to me. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Okay, let's get back to today's discussion. Take it away once again. Yeah, I mean, they were definitely inconsistent, but I if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times on this show, and my audience is probably getting tired of me repeating myself. I apologize, but the Devils lost no more than 3 in a row, but they won no more than 3 in a row.
Yes.
It goes to show you just how inconsistent they were, because they could never go on that like lengthy winning streak, but they never went on a lengthy losing streak either. I think what really killed them was losing some of those marquee matchups and also losing some of those games that they should have won, like against the Ducks, the Sharks, the Canadians.
The Ducks twice.
They got swept
twice.
Swept by the Ducks. I was there for both. I was there for both games at the Prudential Center and Honda Center. So it was
Jack Hughes, not even an attempt in the shootout, which showed you also, I think, how hurt he was, considering that he didn't really attempt much of anything. And the other thing is, you mentioned it, a lot of inconsistency. They were consistently inconsistent. That's legitimately what the Devils were this past year.
That is true. And to go off some of your points, when you said Vitek Vanecek was a one-year wonder, I would argue and say he was a half a season wonder, because 2022, 2023, come February, come March, we started to see him go and take a turn for the worse. Like he became a little more inconsistent, but it was nothing too alarming. But it was just like you start to say like he's not really as sharp as he was early on in the season, and then playoffs it was completely crash and burn. But Tom Fitzgerald decided to have faith in it, and I don't think it's so much of a hot take to say that the Devils missed Damon Severson and Ryan Graves, because I would say they sure as hell did, because both of them were really good. Like Damon Severson, he took a bit of a back seat in order to focus more on defense, and he was a good bottom four asset. Now, I know in the past, Damon Severson was one of the go-to guys for the Devils. He was a top four defenseman. At least he was playing the minutes of one. Right. But once the Devils got better, Lindy Ruff utilized him as a bottom four defenseman, and while his scoring numbers went down, his defense started to take off a little bit more, and the advanced analytics showed it. And for Ryan Graves, he was always tops in plus minus and defensive point share ratings. And both of them have way more experience. And I was talking to Chico Resch, I was talking to Ken Danico about this, which is like, how do you give both defensemen, Nemitz and Hughes, 5+ years of experience in the NHL in their rookie year? And it's a trick question. You can't.
You don't.
That's the thing.
Right. You're right. You're absolutely right. And it was one of those things where you look at both Luke Hughes and Simon Nemec and you realize that they show a lot of great potential. I think that those two guys long-term are going to be tremendous on the back end for the New Jersey Devils. But to ask them to have top 4 minutes in a year where you lost so many man games combined between Damon Severson and Ryan Graves, it was an issue that Tom Fitzgerald did not address. He should have tried to get another veteran defenseman or two to keep a balance of having guys that are experienced and also guys that are a bit inexperienced to learn from that. And, as crazy as this might sound, Damon Severson was without question our best defensive defenseman in the playoffs. He was the most consistent. He did his job. He did exactly what he needed to do, in my opinion, personally. And, I think he stepped up. And look, it's one of those things where I still am not upset that the Devils didn't keep Severson around. I'm more upset that the Devils didn't find a more veteran replacement, at least right away. And so now you go into this year, you've definitely upgraded in terms of veteranosity on the back end with guys like Pesce and Brendan Dillon, while still having those young guys like Luke Hughes and Simon Nemec now getting ready for their second full year in the National Hockey League.
And this kind of leads into my next topic, which is going into the offseason. How confident were you that Tom Fitzgerald would shake things up? And now that we've gotten to a point where their next priority is to re-sign Dawson Mercer to his bridge deal, do you feel like the Devils hit a home run or struck out, foul, whatever the case might be, whatever baseball terminology you want to use?
The answer I would put simply is that I think Tom Fitzgerald hit a home run. I don't really know exactly where a lot of the criticism of people wanting Tom Fitzgerald fired came from,
I'll just say this, like, because I've talked about it on my show a couple times. I don't think Tom Fitzgerald's job was ever in jeopardy. People just need to find it. In my opinion, people were looking for a scapegoat. And in this case, it's like, oh, Tom Fitzgerald, the goaltending was always an issue, but he didn't fix it. So if he doesn't fix it this time around, he should be fired. I'm just like, no. Vitek Vanecek still had a good year. He did something that hadn't been done since Martin Brodeur, which was win 30-plus games in a single season. Or Akira Schmid, as a rookie, came in and had not one but 2 shutouts against the Rangers in the first round of the playoffs. And yes, goaltending was an issue, but it's just like, okay, I'm sure they could fix it. And they thought that Luke Hughes was ready for a bigger role because he kind of kicked Ryan Graves out of town. And then they got Tyler Toffoli because Sharon Govich wasn't really going to thrive in the Devils system. And then here it comes, the start of the season. Devils are a little inconsistent, and it carries over the rest of the way. And people are saying Tom Fitzgerald should be fired alongside with Lindy Ruff. It's just like, you can't fire the players. You can fire the coach. You need to find a scapegoat in some sort of way. And the best way I can describe it is Christy Flannery of the Hockey News. She was on this show recently, and she said, like, firing the coach gives people the illusion of a change. But as we all know, when Travis Green took over, not really much change. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Continue with what
you're good. No, you're good. And I have constantly been a big supporter of Tom Fitzgerald, because if you look at where the team was when he took over in 2020 as the full-time general manager to now, I mean, you will take that any day of the week and twice on Sunday. I mean, honestly, he's done a tremendous job. And so going into this offseason, I knew that he was going to have a chip on his shoulder. I knew that he was going to go out there and do what he felt was necessary to make this team better. I said it at the end of last season. What the Devils needed to do was become a more balanced team, a more playoff-ready team, i.e., what the Florida Panthers are, who just won the Stanley Cup.
Man, you are like the third person to bring that up. Like our boss, Nick Villano over at Pucks and Pitchforks, he wrote an article about that. I think Christy and Jim Behringer, they also talked about it when they were on this show, and now you're bringing it up as well. Yes, I do see a lot of similarities between the Panthers and Devils, and I've touched on it on this show.
Yes, exactly. It's about finding ways to beat a team in a multitude of different ways. Scoring, playing a physical game, having your goaltender stand up and make the save when you need it to. And look, when the Panthers signed Sergei Bobrovsky to that huge contract, it was a risk. And for the first couple of years, it didn't look good. It's only been the last 2 years, and obviously this past year, where it worked out, and ultimately they got the job done. And Bill Zito's considered one of the best, if not the best, GM in the NHL right now. And so with Tom Fitzgerald, he sees that and uses that blueprint to build the team to where it is right now. Is this a slower team? Yeah, but this is a more balanced team, a more physical team, and most importantly, a more playoff-ready team, a team that is ready to defend itself. I think about Brendan Dillon when he spoke to the media after he signed. He said straight up, I want this team to know that I have their back no matter what. You look at bringing back Stefan Nason saying, I work my balls off. I mean, you look at different guys like that. Tomas Tatar also brings a little bit of tenacity as well. Paul Cotter, not only is he physical and led the Golden Knights in hits, if you can believe that, he also could score a little bit. He's got some skill to him, and he's still very young at 24 years of age. And so when you look at this Devils team, you realize to yourself, it's going to look a lot different. And we all knew that going into this offseason. But I think Tom Fitzgerald pretty much did exactly what he wanted to do. And I'm really excited to see what this team can do under Sheldon Keefe in a new system. You have a little bit of new coaching, not a ton, a little bit, with obviously new head coach and new assistant. And
Dave Rogalski is still there, everyone.
Unfortunately, Dave Rogalski's there. That is the Martin Brodeur effect, in my opinion. But, we'll leave it at that. But I think overall, when you look at this Devils team, they got their number one goaltender. They have a really solid goaltending tandem in Jacob Markstrom and Jake Allen. You have a much more balanced defensive core. You're going to have a healthy Dougie Hamilton with Siegenthaler. Brett Pesci's now on the team. Brendan Dillon. You brought in Jonathan Kovacevic, wwho honestly, that might be one of the more interesting moves of the entire offseason. Because he's still a young guy. He was a fan favorite in Montreal, and he's 6'5". He basically is our Kevin Ball replacement, except he's a righty and not a lefty. And even the guy that the Devils drafted at number 10,
Anton
Look at how
Salayev,
tall he is.
6'7".
He's 6'7". And also, I don't know if you noticed this, Trey. Someone shared this with me. Actually, I think it might have been my good buddy Justin Brady, i.e. Devils Fanatics, over on Instagram. He actually said that the average height for the Devils draft picks this year was about 6'1", almost 6'2", and over 200 pounds.
Yeah, so
If that doesn't tell you what Tom Fitzgerald is trying to do in terms of creating a new identity for this New Jersey Devils organization, not just with the main team, but with his prospects and the Utica Comets and the Adirondack Thunder, I don't know what is. The bottom line is, I think Tom Fitzgerald has done a tremendous job. Wouldn't it have been great to get maybe a guy like Jonathan Marchessault when it looked like it was all done deal? Yeah, but I counter argue this. You get Jonathan Marchessault, you don't bring in Brendan Dillon. That's simply what that was all about. Brendan Dillon, Brendan Dillon's getting 3 years, $12 million. It's not that much, but they wouldn't have had the money to make that move. Also, Tomas Tatar doesn't come back, and who knows if they have the money to bring in Stefan Nason and what he ended up getting. Who knows? So the bottom line is, the Devils, to a lot of people, might seem like they're not completely perfect, and they do have risk, but at the same time, this is a better Devils team than what they were last year. This is a more balanced Devils team. This is a more playoff-ready team. This is a team that is ready to make that next push to being a Stanley Cup champion.
Yeah, so to go back to your point, I was at the draft covering it from the Spear. Great environment. The only issue is the slow Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi was terrible, but
the Wi-Fi in the Spear.
Oh, wait, you've been to the Spear?
No, it's just funny to me.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi was terrible. Absolutely god awful. That was my only complaint about it, but I will spare you that. I will spare you that tangent. Anyway, going back to what you said about the draft, yes, I did notice that the Devils drafted some guys who weren't afraid to play physical. So Kasper Pikkarainen, whose father played for the Devils briefly, like
2 games
ago. Here's what elite prospects describe Pikkarainen's game. He's a player who brings fire and brimstone whenever he steps on the ice. He never fails to capitalize on a good opportunity to make contact, even laying big open ice hits from time to time. Yes. And then Herman Trapp, the other third-round pick, here's how Elite Prospects describes him. A player who forechecks with pace and intensity. He hits and works to get the puck back. And Salayev, described as physical. If Salayev was on the Devils roster right now, he'd be the tallest player on the roster. He stands 6'7". And I actually wrote an article about this for Pucks and Pitchforks, which was I did notice that the Devils were drafting players who weren't afraid to play physical. So Salayev, Pikkarainen, and Trapp, those are just some examples. And I just did those players because they had media availabilities at the draft. They were actually there. So I definitely do agree with you in that sort of sense. And I think there's only like 3 players on the Devils roster that is under 6 foot, if my memory serves me well. It's only a select few: Jack Hughes, Eric Holla, and someone else, maybe Jesper Bratt. But so there's not many players who are under 6 feet. And in the words of Joseph Stanislaw, aka Jersey Joe, the Devils are bringing Sasquatches to the roster to assert themselves and play physical. I'm starting to get the hang of it. Sasquatch Squad.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
It's a tongue twister. I'm like, Joe, there's got to be an easier way to describe it, but you know what? I've gotten used to it.
For sure. I think, and going back to the draft really quickly, and I talked about this on my latest episode, the pick that I liked the most that Tom Fitzgerald made was drafting Mikhail Yorgorov, the goaltender who's currently playing for the Lancers in the USHL, because he was the number 1 goaltender going into the draft, number 1 European goaltender, and the Devils got him, in case people didn't realize this, they got him in the John Marino trade. So when they traded John Marino to Utah, they used that pick number 49 to select Yorgorov. And right there, they drafted 2 more goaltenders. So that clearly shows that Akira Schmid became expendable. And you look at what Nico Dawes brings long-term, Isaac Poulter, who I know a lot of people are eye on, especially with what he did in the playoffs this past year with the Adirondack Thunder in the ECHL. Very, very exciting. I think what I love about Tom Fitzgerald when it comes to drafting is that he really, really does a good job of just picking literally the best player available. And he's very big on, if there's somebody that he wants, he finds a way to get him. 9 times out of 10, he finds a way to get his guy. And that includes free agency, trades, drafting. Really like that. And so overall, I think this has been a really, really great offseason for the Devils and Tom Fitzgerald.
Yeah, so going back to your point about Yegorov and what his potential is, since he played in the USHL, the North America ranked him number 1, and he's committed to play at Boston University. And
Boston, yep.
basically what Jersey Joe, Joseph Stanislaw, told me, because he's big on his prospects, he said, like, he's a good goaltender, but the defense in front of him, and the Devils should be no strangers to this, not all that good. So his numbers might be inflated just a little bit more, but just think about, like, if he had a better defense in front of him. And Boston University, I know I have a soft spot in my heart for the Michigan Wolverines, but Boston University and what Jay Pandolfo is building out there is incredible. So
also, Jay Pandolfo, fun fact for everybody, he was actually somebody that interviewed for the Devils head coaching job before they gave it to Sheldon Keefe.
I'm actually glad that they didn't hire Pandolfo, because I
They
think
don't need a college coach.
Yeah, it's a college coach. And if we know anything about sports in general, usually college coaches don't translate all that well to higher levels. I'm sure there's exceptions, but
unless you're Jim Harbaugh, I mean, that kind of worked out.
Hey, I gotta give Harbaugh credit. Yes, he wanted to get back to the NFL, and he did. And
yeah, but took some cheating to get his way, but it's fine.
I would
As a
say,
Rutgers fan, I'm not salty at all.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Go blue. Anyway, as I was saying,
brother, my dad went to Michigan State, by the way, bud. Go green.
I'm sorry. Where's that at?
Oh, don't start.
I know where it's at. But I'm just saying.
You do know where it's at. Yes, you do.
And Dad, if you're listening to this show, make sure you text me, because I've been giving your school a lot of credit, even though I go to Arizona State. But anyway, digressing a little bit. Let's get off the subject of college and get back to the professional level. Right. Yeah, I'm glad that they actually didn't hire Pandolfo. I want someone who has NHL experience. And I know Pandolfo, former Devils player, won a couple Stanley Cups, but being a player is way different than being a coach. And maybe if the Devils were rebuilding, I would say, yeah, go after him. Yeah. It couldn't hurt. For sure. But since the Devils are trying to compete and make a deep playoff push, give me a coach who has NHL experience already. Yep. So going back to my original point, yeah, Yegorov was actually the number 1 ranked goaltender in North America. And like you said, I was present when I saw the trade alert sign go up on the big screen at the Sphere, the Foghorn. I see the Devils logo. I'm like, wait, what's going on? Because I was trying to meet up with the Locked On Senators guys, and I was in the audience at the time. I wasn't in the media center, and I'm just like, oh, you got to be kidding me. So it's just like, and who's been traded? John Marino. Oh, John Marino's going, and then Jim Behringer said, Trey, Brett Pesce, he's coming to New Jersey. Book it. Before we continue the discussion even more, let me tell you guys about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level up to peak performance: superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number 1 ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Okay, let's get back to today's discussion even more. Take it away once again.
It was pretty much a done deal with Brett Pesce. I mean, like for the last couple of weeks leading up to free agency starting, it was pretty much clear that Brett Pesce wanted to come to New Jersey, and I agree exactly with Tom Fitzgerald. It is an amazing feeling to know the Devils are now in a position where they are a place where people want to come, where players want to be, a part of it. To think that on the morning of July 1st, I just want people to picture this. People woke up to the fact that the Devils were very much in on trying to bring in Steven Stamkos, and that there was a potential that the Devils could sneak in. And then Jonathan Marchessault, it looked like, at least with Marchessault, it looked like a done deal at one point, that it was pretty much Marchessault was a Devil. So even though the Devils didn't get either one of those guys, which is fine, I don't think it was a major loss to not get either one of them. I think it just kind of proves that the Devils are an attractive spot for a lot of people. And let me also just say this really quickly to people, because they'll say, are we really going to make the top 6 better by bringing back Tomas Tatar? I'll give you 2 answers with that. Number one, and I mentioned this, in 2022-23, statistically, with at least 200 plus minutes of time on ice, the line of Tomas Tatar, Nico Hischier, and Dawson Mercer was the second best line of forwards in the National Hockey League overall. I'm just saying, it's not like Tatar is a scrub by any means. He can still very well play, and he wanted to stay in New Jersey. It just didn't work out. But now he gets to come back on a 1-year deal, pretty much a prove-it contract, and a chance to help this team win a cup. The other thing, the Devils have just under $5 million in cap space going into this season. There is nothing saying that the Devils don't go and try to swing for a big move later on in the year. I wouldn't count the Devils out. And there are guys out there that the Devils could still make a move for. People talk about it. Nikolai Ehlers is still a possibility. Is Martin H just going to be with the Hurricanes long term? No. Do I think the Devils go after him? I don't think financially it's a good move. I doubt it. Is there a guy like Patrick Laine? Potentially, but you don't know. There's so much uncertainty there. But there's also other guys that we're not talking about right now that could very well be available at the trade deadline. So my point is that Tom Fitzgerald wanted to improve every aspect of this team, but also give him space to make other moves if he has to. He wants to be balanced, and that's what I like about him the most. He wants to have a healthy cap every year, and that's what he's doing. And I trust him completely. Now, we got to see what Sheldon Keefe and his coaching staff, which unfortunately we already know what most of these guys have done. But be very interesting to see what Sheldon Keefe can do with this team. I'm really, really excited to see what this team is all about.
I mean, to go off your point, it would have been nice to have Steven Stamkos or Jonathan Marchessault, or here's a name that a lot of people were talking, but there was no proof that this was actually going to come into fruition. Brady Tkachuk.
That's the worst one. That was the worst one.
I actually talked to I talked to someone who covers Devils. I won't reveal his name or source, but we were talking at the Sheldon Keefe press conference, because I don't know if he wants me to share this or not. But I asked him, I was like, hey, how come you or other people aren't doing an article on Brady Tkachuk possibly coming to the Devils? And he just told me, Trey, there's no smoke to it. Like it's not going to happen. And I talked to a source in Ottawa, and that person is actually Murray Pam. He actually appeared on my show. He said, yeah, there's no basis surrounding the trade. Devils fans are the only ones talking about it.
Exactly.
And I guess Mike Rupp is to blame. Love you, Rupper. Love you, Rupper, but come on now.
Look, I give Rupper a lot of credit. You know, he's a big Devils guy. He wants to see the Devils do well. They just interviewed him on NHL Network just a couple of days ago talking about the Devils, which apparently is pissed off a lot of the NHL. The NHL Network keeps talking about the Devils, but I digress to that. Simply that's Rupper just wanting something to happen. He was more or less just expressing himself that he wanted the Devils to make a move for Brady Tkachuk. And as much as there's even the family connection there with Tom Fitzgerald and, the Tkachuks, the reality is that if Brady Tkachuk is not asking to move out and there is no other rumblings about it, then there's nothing to it. So I never took it seriously because there was nothing to begin with.
Right. And it's just like people were saying the narrative, saying like, Brady Tkachuk, he's family with Tom Fitzgerald, which is true. Or he has ties to New Jersey. His wife is from there. I'm like, yes, that is true. But keep in mind, his wife is also expecting a baby. I don't think she wants to be on the move anytime soon, respectfully. But I don't know. I don't know her personally, but right. Just if I had to make an educated guess, I don't think she wants that type of pressure if it doesn't need to happen. Sure. But like I said, I can't speak for her. I don't know her personally. And it's just like Brady Tkachuk has a few years remaining on his contract and is not eligible for an extension for, I believe, another 3 years. So you would be at the Senators' mercy if you want to actually seriously conduct a trade for Brady Tkachuk. Because it's like the Senators are guaranteeing you 3 years at least of good service from Brady Tkachuk who is physical, who can score, a great young asset, an all-star. You are at the Senators' mercy. They're going to play hardball, and it's not going to be like a Timo Meyer or a Tyler Toffoli circumstance where you have a pending UFA or RFA where you can get them on the down low. This is a situation where you're going to have to sacrifice a lot from your precious piggy bank.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And I knew, and I looked at it also, and anybody who was going to be realistic, I knew at the time, especially when everybody was talking about it, the Devils needed the money to make other moves to help this team get better. They hadn't even gotten Jacob Markstrom yet at that time. They were still trying to figure out the goaltending situation, the defensive core. They wouldn't have gotten a lot of what they got in free agency and trades if they had made the move for Brady Tkachuk. And I think a lot of Devils fans would have regretted trying to get Tom Fitzgerald to make that move, depending on what the Devils ended up giving up. And I think that would have been tough. I think that still would have been a tough sell for a lot of Devils fans, even with getting him. And my response to that is there are other guys in the NHL that can do similar things to a guy like Brady Tkachuk. I'd rather have several guys that could do that, even not at the same level.
Right. There we go.
Spending a lot of money on one guy that can do all that. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think what people were saying was like Brady Tkachuk brings physicality, and that is true. And he does it at a really high level. And I think Jack Hughes knows that the best of anyone because Brady Tkachuk got physical with during the All-Star game, I believe.
All-Star game.
Yeah, I believe in Florida, and people were pinpointing saying that's when Jack got hurt, but Jack debunked those speculations. Anyway, I digress a little bit. You can get other assets on the down low that play physical, like Cotter, or even though I think the Devils sacrificed just a little too much, Nason, Dylan. Those guys play physical. McDermott. Well, McDermott's not going to play in all the games, but you definitely he changes.
I think he will personally. I think he plays every game because of what he brings, but I could be wrong.
Even if he's like eligible to play, even if he's not scratched, he's not going to see that many minutes because he's not that efficient.
That's very true.
Yeah, he's there for physicality, and he does change the outcome of a game, like we saw with Matt Rempe.
Right.
But it's just like, if we're being realistic, just based on his career past, he's not going to play in all the games unless it's dire.
Right.
Anyway, I felt like Brady Tkachuk was more of a want than a need, and just top six in general.
It's
I will
part of
love
your silly season, Trey. That would be in the category of the silly season.
Silly season is any scenario that has not happened yet, but could realistically happen. Now, will it come into fruition? I don't really know. I mean, I've had a couple silly season discussions happen. Stefan Nason, Tomas Tatar. And I love calling out trolls on social media, by the way. One of my favorite things to do. And I'm the best at it. I always ratio those people. Anyway, I'm done patting myself on the back. I'm just having fun here. Anyway, as I was saying, like, I feel like top six options wasn't a dire need for New Jersey because you got Jack Hughes, you got Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt, Timo Meyer, Dawson Mercer you could count. Andre Palat has some experience. He has experience of stepping up his game in playoff time. Let me just make that perfectly clear. Now you got Tomas Tatar back. I think his role is to replace Alexander Holt's scoring production a little bit. That's fine. It's a different coach. But I think the Devils have a good top six that I think a lot of people would give an arm and a leg for. Just saying.
I absolutely agree. And the thing about Dawson Mercer, because I know you asked me this earlier in the episode about Dawson Mercer and his contract. We have to understand something. He accepted his qualifying offer. So the thing is that it's not like the Devils have to get a deal done right now. But the reality is that Tom Fitzgerald's going to get it done. It's just going to happen when we don't expect it. That's how all of these contracts have gone. If you think about it, every big contract long-term that Tom Fitzgerald has gotten done, he got done when nobody was expecting it. You think about last year with Timo Meyer, came out of nowhere. Jesper Bratt came on my birthday, literally out of nowhere. Absolutely out of nowhere.
I will back you up on that one because I literally did an episode saying, like, will the Devils actually get a deal done with Jesper Bratt? And the very next day, they got a deal done. And I hate it when my episodes age like sour milk because, like, this summer I did, like, Jacob Markstrom talks have stalled, which they did because that's what was being reported by NHL Network, saying it was stalling for the time being and they're at a standstill. But the very next day, Markstrom is traded to the Devils, and I woke up to that news. I'm like, wait, what? wait, this is actually
Exactly.
happening?
And that's tough for you because you live out in Arizona. So
Yeah,
you
I'm
gotta
three.
like wait.
I'm
You
3.
gotta
I
wait
slept
hours.
through the media availability. I'm 3 hours behind.
You're 3 hours behind. You're in a tough spot. But yeah, I mean, here's the thing with Dawson Mercer. He's not going to cost the Devils an arm and a leg because while he's been consistent, yes, he's played every game that he has been able to play, since he got into the NHL. He is coming off a down year. I am excited to see what he can do under Sheldon Keefe. I think he's ready to bounce back. And I think if Tom Fitzgerald's smart, which we all know he is, I think he's going to get a deal done that's going to be very team friendly before he starts popping off again. Just like, if you think about it, look at The Athletic. They just posted an article not too long ago, this past week, talk about some of the best contracts in the NHL. The Devils have 2 of them. And Jack Hughes, and I think also Jesper Bratt might be the other one off the top of my head, or Nico Heischer's contract.
I think Nico. I think it's Nico.
If you think about Jack Hughes' contract, and then you think about what he should be making, the difference is about $6-7 million. I mean, the reality is that the Devils are grossly underpaying Jack Hughes, and that's fine with everybody.
Well, yeah, because they gave him that extension during the 2021-2022 season,
Right.
and he
But
hadn't
this is
taken
how
it off
smart.
yet.
But that
He
shows you
hasn't
how
taken
smart
off
that
yet.
Tom Fitzgerald is. He was banking on his potential to step up, and it worked. I think the same thing applies here with Dawson Mercer. The same thing applied to Jesper Bratt. Same thing applied to Timo Meier. People want to knock on Timo Meier for underperformance throughout the year. First of all, he was hurt, had 2 major lower body injuries throughout the year, and then still led the team in goals.
And he even admitted that the coaching change really helped him.
And the coaching change really helped him. Oh,
Yeah, because I remember.
Think about that.
Okay, don't read too far into it. But anyway, because I remember asking Timo, I was like, hey, how has Lindy been helping you through this turbulent stretch of games? And he kind of gave a small frown momentarily. And then he answered the question, but he didn't answer it directly. He didn't mention anything about Lindy. He just said, we got to play for one another. We got our system that we got to play. Anyway, make your own conclusions. Make your own conclusions. Right. I'm not confirming or denying anything. You can see the video for yourself. Make your own conclusions. But anyway, Neil, we've talked for a lengthy period of time, and I feel like I could talk with you all day, but there's a time limit on this show. Anyway,
there's time and a place for that.
I'm just joking. Any final thoughts, my friend?
Yeah, no.
Let me rephrase that. What are your expectations heading into the season? Let's use that as your closing thought.
I think that I think that this Devils team is ready to take that next step and make a deep run into the playoffs. I'm not sitting here saying that this Devils team is a Stanley Cup contender or is going to be the last team standing and ultimately win the Stanley Cup. But I think this is a team that if they get in the playoffs and they're firing on all cylinders, this is a team that nobody's going to want to face in the playoffs. This team is going to be very intimidating to a lot of other teams. And I'm really excited because you know what also people are not talking about enough? Now there's doubt. Now people are saying, oh, see, this is the Devils of old. They're going to falter. They're not that good. They're overrated. The 2 years ago was a fluke. Now everybody on that team has a chip on their shoulder. Everybody on that team is playing pissed off. And that's usually when a team comes out and plays their best. Pissed off. And you know what? Even the head coach has a lot to prove to a lot of naysayers. Well, he had all this success in the regular season with Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner to a lesser extent and William Nylander and all these guys, but he never won in the playoffs. Now he's got the goaltending. He's got a much better defense than he ever had in Toronto. Does he have the same type of talent in the forward core? Pretty darn close if you ask me, long term. Now he's got to go out there and prove that he could be a winning coach and win a championship. I'm excited to see this team prove themselves a lot this year.
I think we all are. And honestly, think of it this way. The Toronto Maple Leafs made it past the first round, not this year, but last year's playoffs for the first time since 2004. And who was the head coach? It was Sheldon Keefe, if it's any consolation for any people. But Neil, thank you for taking the time to join me on today's episode. Where can my audience find you at?
Thank you so much for having me on, Trey. It was an absolute blast to come on here and talk Devils hockey with you. Yeah, you can see here on YouTube. You can follow me on my personal Twitter at The NVP Show. Also, check out the Devil State of Mind podcast on Twitter at Devil State, Instagram at Devil State of Mind. You can also give us a like over on Facebook. And, of course, check out all the great content over on Pucks and Pitchforks. I will very soon have my first article out for Pucks and Pitchforks, so stay tuned for that. And check out my podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, wherever. And you can also check us out on YouTube as well. Just search the Devil State of Mind podcast and you will find it. But Trey, thank you so much for having me on today. An absolute pleasure. And we definitely got to do this again very soon.
Especially if the Devils are good again. I always keep bringing you on.
Have me on for a positive episode.
Yeah, we got to do a more positive episode because it seems like I always bring you on when the Devils are at a down point. But I guess this is sort of positive.
This is better. We're getting there. We're building it
up. Good off season. Yeah. And I like your shirt. For anyone who's listening on podcast streaming service, he's wearing a shirt saying, "Did they win the cup?" ? Which is
and on the back, which you can't see, but on the back it says, "Then it doesn't matter," and then my podcast logo. This is a one-off. My brother made this for my birthday.
Okay.
But I will promise people, I am working on getting podcast merch. I know people have been asking me. I promise you I will get it. I will get it to you guys.
Awesome. Maybe the network will allow me to sell merch. I got to see because, I don't own the Locked On Devils brand. But anyway, hopefully I don't get in trouble for saying that. Anyway, like I do to close out every episode, continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day in New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Neil, thanks for appearing once again.
Pleasure.